welcome to the last session of the evening. Hope you're still here. I had such great fun listening to the previous two talks. I've learned so much, and I'm so glad that there are links out there. I'm going to dig into them after the session. So yeah, the last session for today, remote brainstorming for beginners. So a little bit about myself. I'm Saee, and as Pranava already introduced me, I'll just take another second. I've been a digital product designer for 7 years and worked with some amazing people and learned a lot from them in my time with companies like Adobe and Microsoft. And brainstorming has been a key contributor to my learning, because through brainstorm sessions, whether I was facilitating them myself or I was watching people conduct them, I learned a lot. Collaboration, thinking processes, and individual people's sort of way of approaching a problem. So in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to try to talk about and distill my learnings in the form of some tips. I'm going to show you a few activities that are apparently working well even in remote brainstorms, and just some advice on how you can structure your brainstorm and who to call so that you're set up for success and everyone who's participating also leaves with good takeaways. So let's start with the best use of a brainstorm session, right? I used to think when I started my career that a brainstorm is best used for the ideation phase of the design process. It was only when I started working and I saw people use these different activities for other purposes that I realized that you can actually use brainstorming, getting people together to find new and worthy problems for you to solve. So I can give you an example of this. So at Microsoft, I was part of the Outlook team, and they have this really amazing program. The research team has this really amazing program where they have design sprints set up. So we get actual users, and the product team sits with the users, and we have a design sprint. So, we kind of co-create together. So the purpose of this whole process was also to understand, unmet and unarticulated user needs. So through the activities, we realized that there are a bunch of problems that you won't find, written about in forums. Or when we used to do interviews with users, perhaps they did not come out as explicit problems or user needs. So through this process, we learned about a lot more about their world, and especially in the ideation phase of the design sprint that we ran, our users came up with a bunch of ideas. Sure, maybe we didn't take the ideas as they were to completion into the product. We probably tweaked them a bunch, but through that process of seeing them talk about their ideas and solutions, we realized what their mental model is like. So that was pretty useful. Another reason, another place you can use brainstorming activities is to seek new opportunities for growth. And I saw this occasionally where my product team, and there would be brainstorms led by my product managers every few quarters, trying to just come together, the whole cross-functional team comes together, designers, engineers, product managers, researchers, and they'll come up with like a specific theme. Like, for example, how do we grow Outlook in markets where, Outlook is not currently? And the activities that we did, and because we had different expertise in the room, the ideas that came out were really diverse, and some of them have been sort of budgeted for production and will go out into the world soon. So it's pretty cool, the impact. Another way that brainstorms have helped me, especially as a designer, is it's helped me create a long-term vision with my product team. Now, what this means is, I'll give you an example. When I joined Outlook, Microsoft's email and calendar app, I was tasked with the redesign of its calendar experience for the mobile web app. And we were a small team, and instead of doing the typical thing that I'd seen in other projects happen, is the PMs create a spec, there's some research happening on this. What we did was we got in the room, and we did a bunch of brainstorm sessions where we looked at time management as a theme instead of just calendar. And how that helped is, we also noticed a bunch of user needs and problems that weren't addressed by nobody, not us, not by our competitors. And some of them, as Outlook, as a product, we were well placed to cater to and solve for. So it made it into our roadmap, those specific problem areas to solve. And I did an ideation session with my product managers as well, where the ideas that came out were extremely raw, very, high level, quite vague. But now looking back, I know that, there's a deck where all these ideas reside. And often when we are coming up with the roadmap for, what our next set of features is going to ship, what we want to build for our users, we often find ourselves going back to that deck and all those ideas, because, that deliberate thought process of understanding the problem has happened together. And it also helped us because we were on the same page from that day as a team. Brainstorms to solve a specific problem. And this is, of course, something I had done, as part of college. So an example of this is I was kind of stuck in a problem where, we had to come up with a solution for new internet users who don't use smartphones. They're not well versed with the interactions in a smartphone. There are language barriers, tech barriers. And so I was kind of stuck. And instead of like pushing through and coming up with maybe, concepts that I was not happy with, I kind of asked my team, people who were not working on the same product specifically, to come and spend an afternoon on a Friday with me. And I gave them enough context and gave them some tools on Figma and told them, I want ideas on this. That's all I want. And everyone went crazy. And the best part is one of the ideas that came out of it actually got productized. So the goal here is, if sometimes one brain is not enough and you want diverse perspectives to come in, and this helps a lot. And last but not the least, and this is something I've really kind of like, because especially in a remote setup nowadays, sometimes brainstorm sessions can just be to help your team bond, right? In this day and age, post 2020, we don't know when we'll get to meet our colleagues. I'm starting a new job soon. I don't know when I'll get to meet them. So while team lunches are not possible, maybe a very low stakes, fun brainstorm session could do the same thing. And how that would work is, one, of course, the activities help break the ice. I get to know people, but I also get to observe them, the way they think and their working style, so that when it's time for me to actually work with the team on an actual project, it's much smoother, and that rapport is created. So with that, the next section is who should be there. And on one hand, I used to be very careless. I would just call people who I thought it would be cool to have in a brainstorm session, without realizing that they might actually come there to help me out, but it's not a good use of their time, and they should also probably feel like they have used their time well. So this, and please feel free to take a screenshot, but this is 4 categories that I try to make sure that there's representation from. Stakeholders can be people, like I already said, my product managers and engineers who are going to build the product. It can be perhaps even users, as the example I gave you earlier. Subject matter experts can be people who are not part of your team at all. And an example is when, like I said, we were looking at working on a product for non-smartphone users in India. We got some people in Microsoft who had worked on very different project, but for the same target audience. We got them in the brainstorm sessions so that they could bring in a lot of their things into the whole conversation, and that helps. Enthusiasts are, this is just something I like. Like, enthusiasts are people who might not have any subject matter expertise or stakes in the whole process, but they're just, co-workers who want to help you out. And why this might be interesting, because if you have just one person like that in a remote brainstorm session, it kind of helps bring the energy level up. So, and it gives you confidence. They'll be talkative when others are silent, so that helps. And session partners, I'll just talk about the 3 roles, but session partners are crucial people you need to run the activity smoothly. So again, session partners, right? A facilitator is someone who conducts the activities. Do keep in mind that it doesn't have to be someone who's on the product team or knows the product inside out. I have friends in the industry who have done so many brainstorm sessions. They're so good at facilitating brainstorms that they kind of help other teams do this. So they just go in as facilitators. They know the do's and don'ts, and they know how to read a room. So it can be someone outside your team as well, or it can be you. Assistant helps, of course, with the logistics and stuff. But an ally is someone, like I said, I often like doing this for my confidence. I'm a very nervous person. And before a session, I'll probably ask one person, like I might ask my researcher, hey, you have a lot of context about this project already. Why don't you, be like my plant in the audience, like, so especially in a remote setup, people can be shy about speaking up. And I've often seen that I'll introduce an activity. Hey, let's do crazy eights. I'll introduce the activity. And at any point I say, who wants to go first? People don't do that. And your ally can be someone who gets the ball rolling. So it's good to have someone like that. And a decision maker is someone who helps focus the effort. Now, this is not a necessary role. The goal is to get a lot of ideas from the brainstorm. You don't necessarily need this kind of a person, but if you have a brainstorm where you're starting with a lot of problem areas, and then you shortlist a few, then you have a lot of ideas on those problems, then you shortlist those. So these points in time where you need someone to take a decision. A decision maker should be someone who has a bird's eye view of the product and the market and the organization's working, the tech, everything at a bird's eye level, so that the whole brainstorm effort and people thinking and time is focused in a productive manner that actually helps you and the product eventually. So it's good to have that. And I've seen a good person to have is, I've seen product leaders take this role and they fit it very well. So they needn't even participate. They can just be silent spectators, only coming in to help make decisions. So some brainstorm activities in real life that work well on a remote setup as well. I'm just going to quickly talk about those. One is brain writing. And by the way, this is a screenshot of FigJam. And one quick note, I love FigJam. I've never used it in an actual brainstorm yet. I'm very excited and I'm hoping to use it soon. But don't get tied by the tool. Never get tied by the tool. Not you as someone who's conducting the workshop also, and just make sure that the people attending are familiar with the workshop. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So brain writing, coming back to the activity itself, is you get people, you give some context, you give what the goal of the brainstorm in general is, and ask people to dump their ideas, their or just their opinions and thoughts onto post-its, and do it silently so that there's no bias involved. And why I like it is because it kind of gets a lot of things out of the way, and gives you a clean slate for the participants to go on with the next set of activities. Where it also helps is in this example is of affinity mapping. So a lot of times the stuff and content created in the brain writing activity, you can use that, read it, and you can have them bucketed into categories, which is what affinity mapping is, visually putting them in categories. Some ways this can work is maybe you have the categories already clearly spelled out. For example, if it's an ideation session, I have buckets that represent the different phases of a user's journey. So the post-its are then, either as a group or just the facilitator, they are grouped in that form. But I've also benefited from affinity mapping in a way that, we had a lot of post-its, and as a product team trying to figure out a new product, we didn't even know what those buckets could be. But when we went in together and read those post-its, we started seeing patterns emerge. So sometimes affinity mapping works in reverse also, where you find new themes and they start emerging and you place them, and they start making sense to you going forward. Roses, buds, and thorns is a great activity to do when you're trying to understand what is working and what is not working. I've seen it being used in experience reviews of products. For example, you ask the user what works well, which is roses, what is not working great, but it's working well and has potential, that would be buds, and thorns would be things that are just not working. I've also seen this method used by design leaders when they're deliberately trying to influence their design team's culture. So a lot of stuff, like for example, what's going well, with our team culture, what are some processes that are great for our designers, their careers, etc. And like there's a whole brainstorm session that happens. And I've seen design leaders really value the buds bucket, because that is where they can now influence and make it happen, convert it into roses. cheesy name, but it works really well. Crazy Eights is a really fun exercise. It's 8 minutes and everyone has to come up with 8 different ideas. It's actually quite difficult to come up with 8 ideas in 8 minutes. But the goal here is, one, to get people to reactively put ideas out. So, like sometimes it just helps to get the bad ideas out in the beginning. Maybe after Crazy Eights, you have some deeper, ideation activities. Another way you can benefit from this is when you have a long day, putting a Crazy Eight session just in the middle somewhere when you're starting ideation can be good, because it just wakes everyone up. So it's quite fun. And shout out to FigJam for coming up with the timer feature. I think it's still in beta, but yeah, this is a great tool. I've tried it out. Visual voting, this is just the last activity I want to talk about, is best used at a stage in the ideation process where the concepts are slightly more mature. So let's say there were 20 Crazy Eight ideas, or other activities that you did. So out of those 20 ideas, the decision maker thought that 4 of these ideas are good for the product, like worth looking into. Now, as a participating team, visual voting is you silently go and give your stickers. You put stickers. Again, Figma has catered to this use case, which is wonderful. And the main thing is, once this is done, ideally anonymously, because then people can't influence. You don't have peer pressure to vote for a specific idea. It's just completely, you're doing it in a pure manner. But once this is done, it's good as a facilitator to ask, why are there so many votes for this idea, but none for this? And it's worth investigating and having discussions around. So those were a few activities. Now, slightly logistical tips about how to get people to attend. It's, frankly speaking, in an organization, everyone's going about their day. There's so many things to do. And with remote coming in, too many meetings are happening, too many emails to kind of reply to, too many chats. So one thing I've realized is it's always good to address the attendee list's motivation. And motivations can be varied. Like, for example, I can convince you to come for a brainstorm session because, hey, you know what? This will directly affect you. How does it affect you? Maybe this is your product, so you want it to do well, so you'll come. Maybe you're a user of this product and you've been complaining about it a lot, and I'm like, hey, why don't you, we're having a brainstorm, why don't you come and do some contribution? It'll be really awesome. Similarly, it can be for another reason, like I want to observe and learn. I've done this. I have signed up for activities and brainstorm sessions because, one, it could just be that, hey, they're talking about designing for non-smartphone users in India, and that's something I'm super interested in from a career perspective, perhaps. So I'll go attend. This is a great motivation for me to attend and participate. It could also be that sometimes it's a team that you kind of look up to, and you want to see how they work. Like how do they work? How do they think? And I might just participate because of that. And I've also seen, it might sound funny, but I've also seen people attend and actively participate for pizza. Like in office, I would be like, please come for this brainstorm session. And oh, by the way, there'll be pizza. I've seen people come in. But hey, the point is to get them to come. And after that, the activities and how you are going to conduct it is going to be amazing, right? So they will participate. So a prep checklist for getting people to attend is, know who your key participants are. Like these 4 people or 5 people, I want them to come for XYZ reasons. So make sure you schedule around them and find a date and time that fits for them. Be transparent about your agenda and schedule. If you send out an invite for 4 hours on a Monday afternoon without really saying what it's about, what the activities would be, when the breaks would be, you're not giving people a lot of confidence to attend. They'll be too scared to attend, frankly speaking. It's really overwhelming. Send out context pre-reads. So this is something I started doing, and I respect it a lot when people do this. So there's some reasons why you should do this. And what this is actually sharing information with the participants about the area of the brainstorm, right? Like, again, I keep going back to non-smartphone users, non-smartphone internet users in India. So this is possibly a very new area for my team in the US. They don't know, like they didn't grow up here, so they don't know what that could mean. So I've done a bunch of research, and As part of the invite, I'll send like this really nice summary of who our users are. Here are some research insights, and I send it a couple of days in advance. Couple of reasons. By not doing this during the session, at the beginning of the session, I'm saving a lot of precious time. I'm also saving time because if people have questions, by sending it 2 days in advance, they can ask you asynchronously and you can answer it for everyone. And the third reason is for the participants. A lot of times the topics can be heavy and people need some time to focus on and figure out what's happening. To kind of get onboarded to all these concepts before they come in for the session. So context pre-read works really well. Be transparent about the expected outcome and the participant skills required. Like if there's a lot of sketching happening, I know for a fact that my PMs and engineers might not show up, but it's good to be transparent about it. And very important, it's a hygiene thing, but tools and permissions should be taken care of soon. And when I say tools, I also mean perhaps even ask people what tools they're comfortable with, before you decide which one to take. I know I have colleagues who have used Excel sheets to do brainstorm session. It works perfectly because, it's comfortable and the activities are what's important. Also, you could share tutorials or you just give like a run through of the tools so that when you're getting into the activity and when, everyone's brain juices are flowing, people are not distracted by how to use the tool to get it done. And then getting people to participate. This is all about engagement. And in remote sessions, it's extremely difficult because people can be shy. They can keep their videos off. So, they're checking phones. I know I sometimes check phones during meetings. I'm not going to lie. You wouldn't do that in a physical room. So the way to do that, and this is a work in progress, set of advice for you. One is monitor time on the activity. Each activity, if it goes for too long, it's going to bore people, right? If it's not like giving a lot of benefit to the conversation. At the same time, between you and the decider, perhaps like you as a facilitator, also be mindful that if there is an activity or a conversation that has suddenly come up without you planning for it, but it is getting you closer to the expected outcome of the brainstorm, be transparent and say, hey, you know what, let's do this. Let's not do the next few activities. This is a great conversation. Let's, sort of double click into what's happening here and get into it. At the same time, not all conversations and ideas and, things come up that are very useful for the expected outcome. What I do is I create a separate space to capture, any digressive conversations. Now, this is important. What I used to do was, if someone's talking about an idea and I'm like, this is not exactly related, but it's a great idea. Why don't you put a pin in it and we'll talk about it after the session so that, my brainstorm session does not get derailed. What I do is I'll probably create a space on the, this is FigJam. So I'll create a space for people to put these ideas. It works really well for a couple of reasons, 3 reasons specifically. One is, if you ask them to tell you about the idea at the end of the session, chances are they've forgotten about it or the essence of the idea is lost. Secondly, what is happening is when you say, let's talk about it later, you're not snubbing them, but there is a chance that they might not speak up later or, when they have like another idea, they might actually think twice about speaking up. And that's not what you want in a brainstorm session. It needs to be a safe space. So by doing this, you're saying that you are sort of speaking, but, it's not derailing the conversation. The third thing to happen is because now that participant has safely registered an idea and kept it somewhere, they're not going to be thinking about it. And they're going to now focus on the activity at hand. So this works wonders. And as usual, FigJam has solved for this use case. You have stickers, you have post-its, you also have disappearing chats, that come on your sort of cursor, and you can leave reactions for other people's ideas asynchronously. And some obvious things, but worth mentioning, look out for the quiet people, ask them pointedly about their opinions and ask them to go first. Take screen grabs. And this sounds like a really silly thing, but I always forget. And why it's important is because people are investing their time here. I want to send out a report later and I have no documentation of it. So take screen grabs. Now, once the brainstorm session is done, ask for session feedback. And I think this is generally, even in an IRL situation, you should do that. But in a remote session, because you don't get to see people, there are a lot of non-verbal cues that you don't see, like, maybe an activity that didn't land really well, you can see that in the room. People are confused, but you can't necessarily see that in a remote situation. So ask for feedback. I send out forms sometimes, anonymous forms, and the 3 key questions, not necessarily in this format, but the 3 things I try to understand is, were people satisfied with the outcome of the session, of the brainstorm session? Secondly, did the activities and the tool help with the process, or was it hindering it? Were the activities too convoluted, for example? Maybe I won't do them next time. And lastly, did people feel heard? Did they feel like, not just in terms of, could I hear you in a like a Teams call, but also, were you allowed to speak up? So stuff like that helps you improve, and it also makes the participants feel valued. Share reports. So this is being inclusive for people who could not attend. And there are people, it could be stakeholders who deserve to know what happened, because they have to build on top of it later on. But it can also be just people who want to contribute. So share reports to tell them what happened and what decisions were taken, if any, but also keep a channel open for asynchronous contributions. So once a session is done, I'll probably say, for those of you who couldn't attend, please go to the Figma file and just tag me, put your ideas there, put your thoughts there, do the activities on your own if you want, in your own time. Just tag me so that I can come back and see it. And lastly, announce the impact of the ideas that come out of a brainstorm session, especially if it's making actual impact to the product. A real world example of this is, I did a very casual brainstorm session with my design team about a very specific problem. I thought it was fun for everyone and all of that. And I realized one of the solutions was so solid and fit so well into the product that I took it up, I built it. It is part of the product. And not just that, we're scaling it to other products as well. Like, you never know where your idea and your contribution in a brainstorm could go to. So I felt like I owed it to the designer, and I went back and said, hey, you know what, that idea you gave during that brainstorm session, it's in the product. Thank you so much. And that just is amazing, because now they will feel like they contributed. And hey, if I hold a brainstorm session again, I know they will attend. So that's it from me. Thank you so much.